How you doing, Sydney Decker?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Riding the wave.
Melissa. I wanted to say your name, but it got stuck.
Whoever you are. Hi.
I
Yeah,
know.
riding
Well,
the
I
wave.
do want to say for everyone that's not familiar with astrology, I would pay attention at least this year to where Aquarius is in your chart because we just this past weekend had a really big, we were just talking about it before we started recording, so that's why I'm bringing it up. But um, we had a very big transition where Pluto takes 20 years to move into a sign just moved into its next sign after the last 20 years. So it's moving from Capricorn into Aquarius. And so it's moving from a very earth sign into an air sign. So an Aquarius is the sign of innovation, community, connection, new ideas, uniqueness. A lot of change is going to be happening in our world for the next 20 years. So the best way to understand this for you, there's no control over it. We have no control. We just kind of have to ride that wave. But is to take a little bit of time to do a free natal chart. They're online and just see what and where Aquarius is in your chart because it'll help you to see where you are going to be rebirthed in your life for the next 20 years or where to pay attention to or where majority of the lessons and the things that you need to learn about yourself are going to be. So I just wanted to take a moment because we're right by the change when that took place.
Nice. Yeah, I can't wait to figure out what mine is. It's
Yeah,
interesting to me. Awesome.
I
Well,
got to look up my mom's.
yes, I know. It's going to be fun to see. And then we could track it and say, okay, is this really going to happen? Is this really happening? What's going on here? Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, today, speaking of what's happening, we have our first guest of our third season. And so it's very exciting. His name is Matt Priest, and Matt is a high performance health coach and former gym owner. And after serving honorably in the Marine Corps, Matt has turned his attention to his fellow military veterans to enable them to capture their health back, get off the unneeded medications, and to lead their families the way they were meant to. Matt has over 13 years of experience in the fitness industry, 9 of which he owned a local gym in his community. He's widely known as the go-to coach for military personnel and veterans, from helping active duty members pass their PT testing, making tape, I don't know what that means, and fitting back into uniform, to helping his fellow veterans drop the nasty civilian fat, get off their medications, and get back to their prime shape. He loves to serve those that serve our great country. So if you're a veteran, a first responder, or just someone that loves to support those that do, and you need help getting back to what you know you should be, please reach out to Matt, and I'll have all of his information at the end of this podcast. And yeah, hi Matt, how are you today?
Good. How you doing, Melissa? I appreciate that intro. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to
Yeah.
have you here today. Because this is our third season, so we're beginning to speak about relationships. Relationship. Now we can talk with you about relationship to your body. Um, After stress, it seems like that's like a really, really big thing. For a lot of people that have PTSD or just trauma, stuff like that. So maybe talk about that a little bit, and how can people who have been through trauma cultivate a better relationship with their bodies?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, I think everything starts with the foundation of fitness. So that's what I tell basically all my clients. So, like, if you don't know where to start in your health journey, whether you had PTSD, whether you're just getting out of the military, maybe it's just you're Joe Schmo and you need to get back in shape, right? Like everybody needs to start with the foundation of fitness. So for me, that's just working out at least a couple of times per day, because I truly believe like just doing the workout is honestly like the hardest, but also the easiest part too, right? Like the nutrition's really, as far as like the mindset, it's the hardest, right? Because it's like we all kind of know what to eat, things like that, but then we're surrounded by all these great foods around us all the time. So navigating those situations is almost harder than just saying, you know what, I might not have that part figured out, but at least I'm going to go work out at least 2 or 3 times per week, right? Like even if it's just 20, 30 minutes at a time. So and I think another reason is truly the foundation, going back to like the depression and the PTSD and things like that, is that once you start that, a lot of things alleviate from that aspect. So I was in that position myself, which is why I love to teach about it and coach about it. Where I had got out of the military, I was overweight, whatever, on a bunch of pain meds. What like, long story short, I had surgery at the age of like 22. Um, and so like I just kind of couldn't do a lot of the things I could do. And I use that as an excuse to overeat, abuse pain meds, that type of stuff. Um, and then once I kind of just woke myself up and said, I got to do something about this, a lot of things alleviated from that, right? So like my excuse was always my injury. Well, it's like, well, once I lost 20, 30 pounds, like magically, like I don't have, like I'm always going to have back issues. Like you don't get back surgery and not have back issues anymore. But a lot of it alleviated, obviously, like losing that weight, start eating healthier, right? Start feeling better mentally about myself, physically about myself. So I think a lot of it is like, what can we like basically assume that we all have in common, right? And whether you have PTSD, depression, whether it's just like you don't have any of those things, but it's like you're not feeling great about yourself. And that thing is like basically if you do the work, if you start feeling good about yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, like a lot of that stuff is going to alleviate like just at that foundational level. So sorry, that was kind of like a long-winded answer, but
No, that's really good. I'm really interested in all this because I have horrible, horrible track record with just eating when I
mm,
don't want to. It's stress eating. It's, all of that stuff. And I see it now. I was doing really well and then grief struck. I lost
mm,
my brother. Here's another excuse to just down the cookies and the cakes and all the things. And then I start to feel bad and then I feel guilty and then the whole cycle begins. And, so it's really interesting to me, how you can help people to get off of that wheel. And like, do you just allow yourself though when, you do find yourself in some sort of like turmoil to go back to that because it feels good and it helps you to feel safe? Or how do you stop yourself from that if you are a stress eater or you're somebody that, just dives back in and just says, oh, whatever, I'm just going to allow myself to do this to make myself feel better?
yeah, I mean, I think it's a slippery slope. And I think that when things like that happen, you should give yourself permission to maybe take a step back for a day or two or whatever you got to do. Um, but eventually you got to get back to it, right? And it's like most people are going to go on this kind of like you said, like a roller coaster ride of just like up and down. I'm on it and I'm something, and the more you do that, the more you're going to do that, right? So like anything can be an excuse. And again, grief is a good excuse, right? But then you're going to find the excuse of like, well, I just had a bad day, right? Let me do whatever it is. So when you can do that in the times that are like, is this really that big of a deal? Like I had a bad day. Do I really need this donut now? Right. Like, so if you can stack those little wins up on top of each other, then when something big does happen, like grief or just something crazy in your life, it's like you may still go to that place, but you're quickly come out of that place. Right. And a lot of it
Mm.
is just having, yeah, the systems and processes behind it too, because if you don't, like, it's easy to just overindulge or overdo, or I'm only gonna have this much. But if you have a system and process to do it, like me, I know, I'm a overeater. Like, oh man, I can put it down. Like even if I'm like low calories, whatever, for a long time, like I can still eat just as much as like big old fat Matt, right? Did back then as Matt now could that is in decent shape, right? So it's like you really just got to structure yourself, right? And that's why I know in most situations I know exactly like how much I'm eating of everything, right? So then when I fulfill that plan, it's like cool, that's all I can have. Like I just limit myself to that. And the more you do that, again, the easier it becomes. It's just like a muscle, it grows stronger every time.
Yeah, and that just made me think about like how I'm utilizing during my grief the tools that I have spiritually, how basically I allowed myself a couple of days to just dive into the grief and to feel it and whatever. But then I said to myself, okay, I have these tools. Now I'm going to begin to use them. And so if you have the tools in place for, good eating or fitness or whatever, then you can kind of then be like, all right. I mean, you still have to pull yourself up and say, all right, it's still your
Mhm.
responsibility, but you have them right there at the ready so that you could just, it's not going to be like this whole huge process where, all right, now I have to find a way to do it. And now I have to, you know what I mean? That seems
Yes.
like what a great idea. It just kind of sparked that in me, like, oh wow, I can really relate to that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just any it's a skill set, and that's what most people don't understand is like this really is a skill set, and they think that I don't know, honestly don't know what people think. I think it's you see it on TV, you see it on social media, this should be easy. I know what to eat. I know I should be working out. Like I know. But it's like what again, systems and process are you putting behind that to actually make sure that is a attainable goal. So what gets measured gets managed, right? And that's one thing we're really big on in the community is like, is this like a measurable goal? Or is it just like because if it's not measurable, it's just a wish, right? Because like if I want to, drop X amount of weight, well, I know I need to be in a certain amount of calorie deficit to do X, Y, Z, and my protein needs to be in this. And then I track the food, and I want to, gain this much weight on my bench press, and then I'm tracking that every week. And it's like now I'm putting pen to paper. Now I can actually see what's going on, as opposed to just like what most people do is I'm going to eat a little bit less. I'm going to get a little bit more active. And then, yes, you will lose some weight and yes, you will see some advantages, but then eventually that stops working. And because you don't understand like how you got there, you're not going to understand how to get yourself out of that position. So it's really a skill set. And like, what do you do for other skill sets? Well, you go hire someone to do it for you, right? Well, you can't really do that for your body. So you got to learn the skill set yourself. So what do you do when you got to learn a skill set yourself, right? AKA like school. We need a degree. We go see a professional for that. We go see the professor, whatever. Um so I think that's why it's really important that you just go seek that professional help. You get the education you need behind you. If I want to learn how to sell more in my business, I need to go hire somebody that's like knows how to do and been doing it, right? Like, and then I get that skill transferred to me, right? And people think about that when it comes to making more money or I don't know, maybe even like bettering relationships, things like that, but they don't think about that when it comes to their health. So again, it's a skill set that you got to master.
Yeah. One, I want to just say, because it's my first time talking since you guys have started talking, but I wanted
Yeah.
to tell everyone that I have also Matt has a podcast, and I was a guest on that, the Fit Veteran podcast.
Yeah.
So I
I
did
think
want
you were
to,
my first guest.
yeah, it was really cool and
Yeah. You're
exciting.
special. You got a special place on that
Yay.
podcast.
Yeah, so that's how we connected and we met, and I just really enjoyed your energy and what you're about, and a lot of and also as a person too, because I've been on other podcasts. But I really liked the way in which you ask questions because you're someone who was wanting to connect more deeply rather than just kind of hear my story. Like you were actually like curious about how I lost my dad and different things and asked like really profound questions, which was really cool. So that's why I wanted to have you on as a guest. And I felt like you had a lot of really good things to share. So what I'm curious about with everything that you just said, which was really helpful and wonderful and connected a lot of dots, but where did your journey with this really begin? Like you said, you had an injury when you were 22, but where did your shift? Because you're like, all of a sudden I woke up. Like, how was that different? Like being asleep and then waking up and deciding to get the skills, to do the stuff, because for me, I procrastinate and I have commitment issues here and there to committing to my health. So
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't in the military, basically what I'm saying. So like someone who
Mm-hmm.
kind of has that drive, who's been taught to do in a certain way, I wasn't given or taught
Right.
that way.
Right.
So how did you get that switch for yourself of like, what do you think would be an easy thing for people to notice within themselves?
It's a really good question. Because yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to look at certain people and be like, well, he's just motivated, or he just has more discipline, or and that could be true. I think we all like inherently have certain things that other people don't have. So it's really finding some skills within yourself that maybe you can latch on to. But to answer your question, like I think it's like honestly like pain is a big driver, right? And I don't mean like
Mm.
physical pain. Yeah, I think like emotional pain, like if you can take yourself back to that time where you're just like done, you're like fed up, you're like holy shit, like you looked in the mirror, you stepped on the scale, you saw that number you didn't like. um I think it's just going back to that place like every single day, and it's hard to do after a while, right? At some point it needs to be like a development of the skills, right? The habits, the routines that you set in place for yourself. But I think, man, even for the first year, if you can just live off that kind of like that, I don't know, like a chip off the shoulder, right? Chip on the shoulder is like, man, I'm not letting that happen again. Like I'm not allowing like, do I want that, do I want that donut? Yeah. But do I want to feel like I felt like that, 6 months ago, or would I rather have that donut right now? So it's just like almost negotiating with yourself, but winning the negotiation. I feel like we all have negotiations with ourselves like every single day, right? And again, it's just strengthening that muscle of like the more that you win, let the bad side win, right? The side that's like, you good, don't worry about, the more you let that side win, like the harder it's going to be to overcome that, right? But the more you let the right thing, like the discipline side, win, the more you become disciplined. And so it's not just, oh, you were just always disciplined. It's like, no, I mean, we all go through that shit. It's like I want to go out with the boys and blow through a freaking 6 pack or 12 pack or whatever sometimes, but it's like, do I want to wake up in the morning and have a hangover? Do I want to
Hmm.
not be present for my kids? Do I want to worry about my weight now because I freaking drank 1,000 calories last night? Like, so it's just, I think it's just that negotiation. If you can be more on like the mental side of it, and less on the emotional side of it, and just like logically trying to think through it, right? So I think that always helped for me. That might not work for everybody, but for me, it's just like the pain of the past is going to be more significant for me than like what I really want right now in this present moment.
And another question that I have is when did you really get involved in the military? And what was that journey for you, like the relationship with your body and the health, and how did it change after you got out of it while still utilizing some of that skill set?
Honestly, like the military is just very much like you're just going to do what you're told. And I think that's why veterans struggle so much with getting out, because it's like when you lose that account, like even me, when I first got out, it was like the first 6 months, I'm like, I'm never running again. Like, I ain't got to run. I'm not running again ever, And that's how I gained all the weight. I was like, nobody's telling me what to do. This is great. Um, so for me, so it wasn't even like the military instilled that in me. It was more of like, you have to do this type of thing. And I think when you have to do something, like it almost takes the fun out of it. Like
Hmm.
I got friends that just love to like go shoot guns, and they're all about guns. And it's like, I mean, I don't hate guns, but it's like the Marine Corps kind of took that shit out of like the fun out of it for me. Sorry, I cuss.
Hmm.
Um, because it's just so strict. It's like, oh, don't do this, do this, and it's just like, man, I don't really enjoy it that much. So like trying to get back to your question. So basically, like I think understanding how I felt, um, and my confidence level of when I was in really good shape is the biggest thing you can take out of the military training, like as far as like the physical fitness side of it. But it's not like they taught you much to like, this is how you do a squat. This is, it's just like do push-ups and go run. That's
Hmm.
what your thing is. So did that answer your question? I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to see so that way, because like you also have a niche, right? Like you have a community in which you like to serve.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to help people to better understand too, like maybe they're not military or anything like that, but to understand what it's like and how you can shift the relationship with your body to become like you were of service in a different way than you are of service in your body now. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah.
Like when you were in service as in the military, you were being told you had to do push-ups and you had to run. And so the relationship with your body was more of I don't mean this way, but I'm a tool.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm I'm used. Where
Mhm.
now it seems like your relationship is I utilize my
Yeah.
pain and my power and help the community that I most resonate with, which is a part of myself. So that's what I'm trying to see. It's a philosophical but a deeper kind of question of how did you change? Because I can tell, like when you talk about your past and even in the military a little bit, you're like, I mean, I was in shape, but I didn't really like myself. Where now, when you talk about it, it's a passion. You're like, you're gave us so much good information already about like eating
Mhm.
and the mindset and noticing. And that comes from more of like a centered heart space a little bit. So I'm trying to figure out what that journey was like for you.
Yeah,
Like
like what
how you,
changed? What
yeah.
what shifted between from when you were in the military, you were obviously in good shape, but it wasn't like because you wanted to be, it
Mhm.
wasn't because it was a passion. And now, and then it sounds like you kind of stopped for a little while, but then you brought that pain into it and decided to become something different with that to serve other people. So it's like, what was that shift within you? What changed?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think about that sometimes too, because I'm like, man, I didn't always like this, and I
Yeah.
even like I'm sure a lot of people, even when you guys get into your profession, is like, am I the epitome of like health for my profession? Am I the epitome of am I the go-to, like how can I be this if like, back then I was still smoking cigarettes, right? Like straight out of the military, smoking cigarettes, maybe eating fast food and stuff. So sometimes you have that imposter syndrome, right? You're like, I'm not that guy, right? I'm not the Instagram model and the six packed up and that type of thing. So um, but I think it just kind of comes from the same place of like you get tired of who you are, right? You know you need a change, but you also remember the person that you used to be too. And I think that's what a lot of people are trying to get back to. And you're never going to be that same person, but it's also like you know what that felt like, and you know that you can get back to that same area of life, same quality of life. And then from there, it's like getting the reinforcement of other people, I think, too, because it's like, damn, you look good. Like, you're in shape. Like, can you help me? And then it makes you want to step up as a leader and, like, okay, well, maybe this is my thing, right? And I think it's just leadership in general. I tell all my clients, like, you're a leader whether you want to be a leader or not. Like, you got kids, you're a leader. You got business, you're a leader. You got people below you in so have to step up and be the best version of yourself that you can be so other people can emulate that and they can become leaders in themselves, right? And lead other people. So I just think the world needs more leaders. And I think if more people thought of themselves as leaders and people that other people looked up to, they would do things a little bit differently.
Mm, that's a really good idea. That's a good point. So who do you look up to?
Shouldn't hit me with the hard questions, man.
Always.
Yeah, I know. I deserve it too because I was hitting her with all kinds of
She,
all ones I know.
yeah.
Like she's like, "Wow, I'm really sharing a lot here." I was like, "Yes, yes." Um, honestly, I look up to a lot of business people, right? And it's not because it's like, oh, they make so much money and all this, because I think the thing about business is it makes you step yourself up like every facet of business. Like you have to become a different person. And I think that's what my addiction is. Like I'm just addicted to becoming like the best person that I can become for me. Like continuous growth is like just something I'm huge on. Um, so when I see other business people and they're like, we're doing this in the business, and it's just like motivates me to do even more. Um, So I think that would probably be like the biggest people I look up to is just like people that's like kind of doing the same things I'm doing, but like on a way higher level. And it excites me. I'm just like, wow, you can do that. Like, man, that means I can do that too, right? So, yeah, I think it would be that.
I have a question too around, I'm trying to figure out how to frame it, but so you said a lot too, like even in the introduction, and I think that this is important and it's helpful specifically around veterans and a lot of things because I know we're seeing that the world's starting to get a little crazier again in conflict and different things. And so I wanted to see because stress, I just took a Ayurvedic workshop yesterday actually that talked a lot about how stress, mental stress, physical stress, yeah, like overeating when you shouldn't or eating at wrong times can cause weight gain and things like that. But mental stress can have just as a factor into weight gain than overeating or eating the wrong foods. So I wanted to kind of get your experience on veterans and the stress and how you feel like in your programs do you include any help with like mindset as far as like that particular community and because sometimes we get too like I'll even have clients who come in and they're like I'm eating all the right things, I'm doing all the right things, I've cut my calories, I'm following your nutrition plan but I'm not losing any weight and but they're still stressed out, they're still stuck in that unhappy relationship, they still have trauma that they haven't worked through, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Right.
how do you help that particular community that is so stressed
Yeah.
mentally or has seen things, and that's a big reason why they will carry weight or that type of stuff?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Sydney. So one thing we're really big on is just sleep cycles in our community.
Mm,
Yeah. So a lot of people don't understand under how much like I can't think of the word like under rested they are. So like most people are just kind of like this with their sleeping schedule, and that's the thing is like it's got to be a schedule, man, because a lot of people just don't think about it like that. So we're really big on like even on the weekends, going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time.
mm,
Yeah, and that's hard. It's hard to do. But I
yes.
say if you can do an out within an hour of when you normally get up, because what happens is what most people do is they stay up Friday night, right? Cool, no work tomorrow. They stay up Saturday night, and then Sunday comes around, and now their bodies got reacclimated to staying up, right? So now, like their normal bedtime might be 10 o'clock. Well, you just pushed it to like 11 and 12 o'clock, right? That means your body wants to sleep in an extra hour to make up for that, and either you can't or you do, and it throws you off even more. And so like the more that you can dial in that sleep schedule and having those routines behind your sleep, the better you're going to sleep, and then the better your hormones are going to perform, and the more weight loss you're going to have, right? So that's like one, right? And that's probably the biggest one I think that most people are one thing and did it. Like they notice a massive difference in energy levels, just stress levels, and the way they process information. So, because like we've all been through it. If you're sleep deprived, if you're hungover, if you're you slept like shit the night before, like you're about like 60% capacity of what you normally can do in your regular functions of like how you process things, right? Like kids are you when my kids don't sleep, they get super emotional. Like my girls get super emotional. It's like we do that too, but it's just the adult. We're not going to sit there and have a breakdown and start crying, right? Some adults might, but like mostly it's like frustration,
I might.
you stress yourself out more. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's just adult, that's an adult version of that. So, anyways, second thing is meditation. So, and I know you guys are big on that in your community already. I don't think a lot of veterans, my clients have even thought about meditating. So it's like getting them to just sit still for 5 minutes, big inhales, big exhales through their nose, try to blank everything out, right? It's a hard practice to do. But I live by it because it's just like it helps me manage my stress levels so much throughout the day. And I notice it's meditation's a thing that you won't notice the effects until you don't do it. And then when
Mm-hmm.
you don't do it, you're like, damn, I didn't meditate today. Like I'm
Yeah.
kind of pissy for no reason, right? So that's the other thing. I was gonna say one more thing too. Oh, so an attitude of gratitude.
Mm.
'Cause typically when we're depressed, anxious, things like that, it's like we're thinking about what isn't instead of what is, right? Instead of having appreciation for those things that are, right? We're just thinking about what we don't have or what's not going right. Um, so in our community, part of our clients' process is every day they got to write at least one thing they're grateful for, and it can be something big. You know, my kids, my wife, be something what we deem as small, right? Running water, hot water, food, comfy bed to sleep on. Um, I think in the military, like one thing like I always go back to on attitude on gratitude is like when I was in the military, we'd go out in the fields for weeks at a time. We'd be sleeping in the back of trucks, in sleeping in fighting holes like that. We had to dig ourselves, right? We'd be eating packaged nasty food. And then we wouldn't shower for like that whole time, right? We'd wipe ourselves down with baby wipes or whatever. And I remember having such appreciation for a warm bed, a warm, soft bed, a hot shower, and a hot meal. Like those were the three best things in the world after I got back from the field. So it's
Mhm.
like, most people would probably never experience that unless you like go camping sometime. Most people like do the glamming or whatever it's called now. And they're in the freaking,
Yeah.
Glamping,
you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah. So it's like, that's not really camping. But yeah, I mean, I would challenge everybody to take away from their life a little bit too in that aspect if they can, as much as they can, and then they'll just you automatically just have more appreciation for those types of things when you do stuff like that.
Yeah, I think those are great because I've just noticed just you talking about that, just thinking about the last week of my life while I'm moving through this grief process that the it was so hard for me to think of anything that I was grateful for. But I made
Hmm.
myself, and I could just feel like the struggle in my mind, just like I'm sitting there going, what am I grateful for? I'm not grateful for nothing,
Hmm.
nothing. And I'm like,
Hmm.
one thing, and I came up with one thing. And after that one thing popped into my head, then another one did. And then I was just like, okay, okay, I feel better. It just like released something in my
Yeah.
mind. You know, if you could just make yourself, like you said, just find that one thing, it just like releases something, inside of you. And then the meditation too. The other day I came in here and I'm at work right now and I had to do a meditation group, and I was like, meditation group. Oh, you know what I mean? But I sat down and only one person showed up, and I was like, fine, one person. I sat there, and afterwards I was just like, oh, thank God I did this
Yeah.
because I feel amazing now. So it's just making sure, like you said, these are tools to have for when you're really going through it, and just say, this is what I need to do. I know on the other side of this is some relief.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And it's hard. We all have those days where like, screw that, I
Yeah.
ain't doing this. Practice things, the more inner peace you have, the more inner peace you have, the better you can just be present in your daily life, and it gives other people inner peace too. Like if you're, especially if you're a leader, like I said, we're all leaders. If you're all wound up and pissed off, like everybody below you is going to be pissed off too. Like,
Hmm.
so that's why you really got to think about it like that.
So I think it's like, it sounds to me like we had somebody else on talking about men and purpose. And it sounds like you were talking about bringing your men, or I don't know if you do have a lot of women as well, finding a purpose after coming back from being in the military, or being in the military, that kind of thing. It just sounds to me like finding purpose, within your family. Is that like a big thing that you talk about in your community?
So as far as family, you mean like my community or like my actual family?
No, I'm talking about the people that you help, helping them find a purpose by showing them how to become leaders within their family, that kind of thing. Is that something that you teach? maybe the guys that come back in and they just really don't feel like they have a purpose anymore. And you help them to find a purpose within, like to be a leader, like you're saying, everybody is a leader and they have a family, and just saying, hey, you can find your purpose here with me. I can help you find a purpose on the other side of all that you went
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think there's a lot of anxiety around when you get out of the military and like, oh, what am I gonna, do with my life? And I honestly feel like a lot of military veterans just aren't pushing those limits. It's kind of like it was crazy when I first got out. It was like, oh, I'm gonna do all these things because I was in the military. Now I can do anything, right? Like I guess I don't know if you call it arrogant or just dumb enough to believe that, right? Um and it worked out for me, but I don't think a lot of military veterans have enough of that, right? Because they just end up kind of going back to what they were doing. A lot, not everybody, but a lot of them end up going back to doing what they were doing before. And it's just crazy to me because I'm like, man, I feel like you accomplished so much, but it's like you're kind of just willing to allow yourself kind of go back into mediocrity, and maybe that's it. I don't know. I think a lot of people have like this uh well back then, or I forgot what you call it, where it's just like you're kind of just thinking of like the highest point of your life and you think that that's it. You think that you're just
Mm-hmm.
done, and I think that's where the anxiety comes from. It's like, what am I going to do now? It's like it can't get any better than what I just went through, and it's like, oh, but it can get a lot better, but I think they just don't have that mental shift, right? And so um
Well, that goes
I
back
hope
to
my
you being there for them, you know what I mean? It goes back to what you were saying before. Find somebody that has been there and knows how to move through that and could
Mhm.
pass on that knowledge, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what I love about the community is a community of if they wouldn't be in the program if they weren't open minded, if they weren't wanting the next level, right? Um, because if you're just comfortable with where you're at, you're just gonna be stagnant. You're just gonna, the symptoms of whatever you have are just gonna become worse. So it's like allowing yourself to say like it can still be a great life even outside of the military.
Yeah. And then the thing that I have, and if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to, but I think too for you, this is more of like a personal thing. Um, and this could be just me picking things up and reading, but how has your family helped you to heal? And you don't have to use names, you don't have to use specifics or anything like that, but it seems like because even when I talked to you on the podcast before, like, and I mean, I follow you on Instagram a little bit, like they're very important to you. And
Hmm.
so I want to see how you use that as a reward and a system for yourself because I think too in the veteran community, I'm not one. So again, I just think that it's hard to connect with the family. And I think we talked a little bit about that. So it seems like for you, you're such a family driven person. And I just wanted to see what that is like because it might give other people hope or something.
Yeah, that's a really good question too. I get anything that I want, right? I'm just very much in like a space that I'm like, well, I can control a lot of things in my life. There's things that just outside of my control, right? So it's like if I can control the way I want my family to like speak to each other and how like my kids, they like all cuddle each other, right? And it's like because they see me doing it with them, they see the mom doing it with them. Um, And so for me, it's like, how do I want to shape my world? What can I do to, like, I can't, in these four walls, I can have a lot of influence on how we act as a family, things we do, the way we speak to each other. Out there, I have almost no control, right? So it's like, I want to have peace with what I can control, right? So I think for me, like, it's just like having that peace, and being able to just know that there are a lot of things you can control. I think a lot of people think everything's outside of their control. And it's like once you kind of flip that on its head, you realize like you can really make a really, really good life for yourself. But you gotta drop the excuses. You gotta drop oh, this happened because of this, and there's nothing I can do about it. Like there are a lot of things you can do about it. So I think for me, it's like I'm really fulfilled doing what I get to do every day, working with veterans and building my business. And then my family's just like the cherry on top. It's like, wow, now I get to be done with work and go hang out with them. And I give a lot of credit to my wife too, because it's like she's everything that I want to be too. Like she has all these interpersonal skills that I just don't have, and it's like I've had to figure out how to talk to people better. I've had to figure out how to think about things a certain way. The way she views the world is completely different in the way that I view the world. But it's also like, wow, well, it makes a lot of sense the way you view the world. You seem very happy, so maybe I should just try to view the world like that too. And I can almost control my happiness that way too, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay, cool. Because it seems like you guys are very like a unit, you know? You
Yeah,
there's a lot of care, there's a lot of love there.
And a
And I think that that's
partnership, you know
important.
what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, even though, you're talking about like being someone who's kind of in charge, but you were the man there, and then the female comes in and you guys are partners and you both have your own ways about you, but you learn from one another. And it's not like anyone's more important than you just have
yeah.
different skills, and you just have, you have male energy, female energy, and it seems like you guys just work really well together.
Yeah, and that's all my wife, honestly. Like my wife runs a household. It's like she's a boss, and my daughter will give me crap. She's 12. She's like, "Oh, so she just tells you what to do." I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much." Like I gotta tell people what to do all day long at work. Like I'll just get told what to do. I'm cool with that. So yeah, yeah. I just so and it comes to like the way you speak to each other and stuff like that as significant others. It's like pleases and thank yous and good mornings and like my whole family doesn't. It's not because of me. Like I wasn't growing up saying please and thank you to everything. It's like we asked in a nice way, but we didn't. But it's just like the older I'm getting, the more I'm realizing like how much your words have an impact on, and it's just those little transactions every single day. And it goes down to the kids, and they tell each other good morning, and again they hug each other, and it's fun. Obviously, they're like regular kids. They still fight and all that stuff too, but yeah, it's just I think it's yeah, like you said, kind of a male energy, female energy, like this is the way we do things, and just having standards too. I think like sometimes my kids, even my wife don't like my standards sometimes because I'm just like we're not gonna have people over here just kicking it, like hanging out all day long. Like you don't get to just do whatever you want with like the kids don't get to just go do whatever they want with whoever. Like we're very like in tune with what's going on in their lives and having conversations with them and stuff like that too. I think it's just huge. Like the more you can be part, like my wife was like, let why don't you let the bus just pick the kids up from school every day? I was like, I don't want to do that because I don't know what's going on the bus. And it's like, it's going to take me like 20 minutes to go get them. And then we get to have a conversation on the way home about what went on in the day, things like that. They get to say hi
Mhm.
to each other so it's like those little, it's like, but if I did it, like, wouldn't they get a lot more out of me being present in that situation, even if it is the same old mundane thing every day? It's just about being present, right? And it's just too easy to like let the system, for lack of a better term, raise your kids. I
Yeah.
think it has to for a certain point, but you can influence a lot of it.
Oh, and there's things going on the bus, let me tell you.
Oh, I
So
know
many
about the
things.
bus.
The
Yeah.
bus, man, when I was growing up, no, you did not want to be there, and you had to just survive it. You had to survive the bus. I had some things I had to go through on the bus. It was not fun. I would never put my
Yeah.
kids through that. If I had
That's
kids, no,
That's
no
another reason my
bus.
kid. Yeah, I don't think my wife ever rode the bus, so she doesn't
Oh, yeah.
understand like
See, she doesn't
what's
Oh
know.
really going
God.
on the bus.
Oh, yeah. I used to get in fights. People were hitting me. People were
Yeah,
mean and nasty. Oh,
yeah,
horribleness on the bus. Yeah. That
yeah,
sounds so great. I love how you just described all that as the family unit and showing up for one another. That's just huge in this world today. It really is.
yeah.
It
I think
really
it's just
is.
yeah, like understanding what your North Star is for your family, like what you want to see, what you want your family to look like, right? And then doing the things that for them to be able to create that, right?
Yeah, setting
Um,
the intention and then manifesting
yeah,
what it is that you want to see in your life. Yeah,
yes, ma'am,
awesome.
yes, ma'am.
That's great. Well, Sid, do you have anything else? I think we're going to have to go into our
Deep
deep
dive
dive
5?
here. Yeah,
No, I think that's good. I got a lot of my questions out.
awesome. All right, so now we're going to go into the deep dive 5. First one of season number 3.
Sounds scary.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are we
Yeah.
Can
doing?
be, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
I'm just going to ask you a series of 5 questions and short answers, long answers, whatever comes to you. All right. Number 1, what's your heart's greatest wish?
Man, you guys are all about the hard questions today. My heart's greatest wish. I think my heart's greatest wish is just to like be the self actualization. So like being the best version of myself, and then my family always being very strong together. Like even when we're older, I imagine the kids coming over for movie night and parties and hanging out and just a very tight knit core family. I think that's like the ultimate goal for me.
What makes you laugh or brings you joy?
My kids, my kids, like they make me laugh so hard, like just the way that they perceive the world and throw little stuff at them, like just question the way they think, and they'll tell me, and I just get a kick out of that, just the way they perceive things and that type of thing.
What has been the best wisdom that you have received and that you live by?
I think going into kind of like what I view as like the theme of this podcast so far is just like things that you can control. Like I think it was Steve Jobs. If you watch, like he's got an interview, and they're like, and I remember watching, like the time I was watching, I was broke. I was actually at like I was at a study. You know those studies you can do where you make money and they like take your blood and that. So I was in like a 2 day study, and I watched this interview with Steve Jobs, and he was like, basically just saying that like all those things that you see in this world have been made up by other people, and you can manipulate those things, and you can make your own world, and you can add to it. So I was like, that was like a mind-blowing moment for me. I was like, wow. So yeah.
What's your favorite self-care or healing activity or practice?
My favorite, I would say working out, because that's the first, but sometimes I don't want to work out. I gotta be honest, like 2 or 3 times a week I don't want to work out. Most fit people that people see don't want to work out every day. Like some do just love it, but probably like the sauna, honestly. Like if I could just sit in the sauna for 20 minutes and get a good sweat and just kind of be in my own space and have my own thoughts, like I really enjoy that.
And what would you like people to remember about you after you're gone?
Hmm. I I don't know. I think that I did what I had to do, and I always just and I that's a hard question.
It is. I
Yeah.
don't
What
even
would I
know what
want
I would
people?
say to that.
Yeah. Um, I think just that I made other people around me better. I think that's my biggest skill, or what I want to see as my skill, is like you can't be around me and be like a low performer. Like you just have to raise to my level, or you're either gonna like get get away from me because you just don't like to be held to that standard, or you're gonna rise to that standard. And it's like I like seeing the people that are willing to rise to that standard. So it's like just making the world a better place, essentially.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I learned so much
Mhm.
that I get to take away and yeah, a lot of stuff for me to think about with my own habits and having a better relationship with my body moving forward. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate you ladies and yeah, it was great. Very insightful conversation. I didn't expect to go to some of those places. So thank you.
That's
Yeah,
where
that's
we
what we
live.
do. Yeah, that's what we do.
I was gonna say, yeah.
So people
But
can find you. Oh, you wanted to say something first?
no, go ahead.
I just wanted to see where people can find you if they want to, if they resonate with you, want to work with you in any way. What's the best place to find you?
Probably Instagram, or it's body underscore OPS is my handle. You also find me on YouTube with the same handle. I'm trying to think where else. Oh, my podcast, the Fit Veteran podcast. So check out Sydney's episode on that. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and I'll put all that in the show notes. So anybody that's
Actually, I
interested.
did. The people that have listened to that said it was very good.
Did they?
Yeah, they said it was
Yeah.
good, and you kind of got to be prepared for it. Because I do. I
Why?
talk a lot about the actual day that my
Oh yeah.
dad passed. So it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, you were very open on that, and I appreciated that. That was a really good conversation.
yeah. Well, I wanted to thank you very much for showing up today. You were, like I said, our first guest in season 3, but also our first guest after a traumatic experience that we're still moving through. And I think that this was the perfect way to get, because we've been a little nervous about how we were going to do talking to people again and
Hmm.
stuff. And I think that this was the best conversation we could have had today. So thank you for the work that you do, genuinely. And thank you for your presence that you bring, because you do bring presence when you talk and stuff. And I think that that's helped me to get through this conversation. So
Yeah.
thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks
Yeah.
for having me again, and would love to do it again. Might have Sydney back on the podcast too as well. So it's great to
Yeah,
connect with you guys.
Nice.
definitely.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for showing up here today for Sydney and myself, and for yourselves, and for this beautiful world that we live in.
Are you going to stop the recording?